Welcome to Leadership in Action, a series of interviews with law firm leaders on issues important to running a successful mid-sized law firm. These podcasts are part of the Managing Partner series presented by Thomson Reuters in affiliation with the Managing Partner Forum and are hosted by John Rebson Jr., CEO of the Managing Partner Forum and President of the Remsen Group. Our guest this month is Kirk M, Director and Vice President at the Webb Law Firm, located in Pittsburgh and specializing in patent, trademark, and copyright law. Mark has a background in chemistry and business administration and handles all phases of intellectual property law at the firm. Welcome, Kirk and John.
Well, thank you, Colleen, for that introduction. We appreciate it. And Kirk, thank you for being with us this afternoon to participate in our Leadership in Action podcast series. And we're going to talk about a real important but often neglected topic, and that is succession planning. And that's something I know your firm's going through right now, and you're initiating much of that process. So welcome, Kirk.
Thank you, John. It's my pleasure to join in today. And yes, it is an issue that we are dealing with and working through it on a daily basis here.
Before we dive into our conversation, can you tell us a little bit about the Webb Law Firm, its history, and some of the priorities you're working on as chair of the firm's executive committee?
I certainly can. The Webb Law Firm is an intellectual property boutique firm. We trace our roots back many, many years to 1845, so we've got a very long extended history of over 170 years in the intellectual property field with our office here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's been probably a doubling of size in the past 20 years. So I would say 20 years ago we were in the 25 attorney range, and now we're in the 55 attorney range. And we believe that growth over that period has been controlled and done in a good manner that is representative of the type of practice that we are and representative of the type of clients that we serve.
You had a managing partner in place for a good long time who was responsible for much of that growth, and he is moving toward retirement, and in comes a new leadership team. And you are serving as chair of the executive committee. And tell us a little bit about kind of your governance model and how you have evolved in terms of leadership and decision-making within the firm.
We do have what we call a management committee structure. Our firm is set up with we are a professional corporation, not a partnership, so things work a little bit differently for us in terms of our titles. But we have a group of directors within our firm who are essentially the equity partners of our firm, if we were, in fact, a partnership. And those directors are the attorneys who have achieved a certain status, who have their client base that they manage and who they work with the other associates, and they are, in effect, the owners of the firm. What creates difficulty in our firm, as with any firm, is who runs things, who is the person who's ultimately in charge. And over the years, of course, that does create a problem if there isn't a properly defined structure in place. So what we have found works well for our firm is to set up a management committee of 3 individuals from the director level who are, again, a group of those 13 directors that we have in our firm. 13 directors, correct. Mm-hmm. 3 of us serve on the management committee who are responsible for running the day-to-day operations of the firm. Now, I say responsible for running the day-to-day operations lightly because we do have in our firm structure an excellent operations staff.
Succession, I know, is an important issue. And when did it become apparent to you that this was something that we needed to really tackle as a firm and make sure that we are, bringing young blood to governance and ownership and client relationships and seeking the cooperation from the senior lawyers to help through these transitions? When did it really strike you that, hey, this is something we need to really focus on as a firm?
I would say, personally, it probably struck me within the past 5 years. And I use that time frame as a gauge because I look back over that period and say, what has changed in the firm and in the individuals who we look at as a more senior status and their practice, and where were things in the previous 5 years and what happened during that time period. So, for example, as I said, we have a long history with our firm. We've experienced significant growth over the past 15 or 20 years, but at the same time, we have very little turnover and very high retention at all levels, from the associate level all the way up through the director level and the senior partner level, if you will.
So the firm is really starting to age out a bit, it sounds.
In some ways, you could say that. We do have what we call our long-range planning meeting, and we typically have that meeting once a year, and our goal of that is to discuss the things that we don't discuss at our monthly meeting or at our one-day annual meeting. We get away for a day or two, and we talk a bit about the long-term goals. And part of those long-term goals that we try and discuss at our long-range planning meeting is succession planning. And we typically would go around the room and ask each person, what is your plan? And what we were starting to realize is that while everybody would give the same answer, particularly the more senior attorneys would say, well, I'm looking to wind down my practice over the next few years. What we were seeing is it's the same answer every year. And over the course of 5 or 10 years, things haven't drastically changed. There might be some changes in practice, but not significant changes to the point that real succession planning was truly occurring. So what we've done more recently is talked more openly about it. I think we've had probably our most productive discussions on succession planning within the past year, where we opened it up as a group and said, look, we all recognize that these are very difficult decisions. We're talking about things that are very personal to each of us here, not only to those who are looking at their future and what are they going to do if they do step aside from their current role, but also looking to those who are younger saying, well, how comfortable am I talking to this person about moving on and transferring some of their practice and responsibility to somebody else? Very difficult discussions to have. So the fact that we are now opening these discussions is a major step for us. And I think that we've taken a huge stride within the past year, not just in opening those discussions, but looking to set forth real plans in place to say we're all on the same page here and we all want to do what is best for the firm so that we are effectively serving our clients with that good quality that they've come to know and expect from our firm, and keeping those expectations going forward for the next generations to come.
I think just the exercise of talking about it is something that a lot of firms just don't do. It's very uncomfortable often for the senior lawyers, and the younger lawyers don't want to press it. There's such a deference to seniority within the legal profession, and, I'm trying to push you out the door so I can get at your clients. That's not the intent. It's about legacy. It's about long-term sustainability of the law firm. And it should be, I think, and I think we're on the same page here, this should be a very proactive, multi-year process. And,
yes, I think we are very much on the same page.
Not something we wait to the eve of the retiring partner to now, all right, let's put a plan in place to go make sure the client relationships are transitioned. No, this should happen over years, where that senior lawyer brings the younger ones along for those lunch meetings and those client site visits, and the younger people within those institutional clients get to know, like, and trust your younger people. And that relationship isn't just dependent on one senior partner who might be moving into his or her 70s, 80s. I see that happen all the time, Kirk, and it just, it's tough. And the compensation systems have to support transition. And, you see these eat what you kill compensation systems, origination for life. Oh, my goodness. That doesn't affect my interest in letting go. If you're rewarding me origination, I brought in a client 50, 40 years ago.
And those are the exact issues that are what create the difficulties for these discussions. It's a very personal discussion, because it's also a very personal decision for the person who's at the later end of their career questioning, what should I do, but more importantly, what am I going to do if I step away from this? How is it going to affect me personally? How is it going to affect me financially? And how is it going to affect the investment that I've put into this career? We have attorneys currently working in our firm, some of our more senior attorneys who have been in this law firm for 40, 45, almost 50 years practicing at the Webb Law Firm. So they've established the large majority, if not their entire career here, and they have built that legacy. And they, of course, want to make sure that they're protecting their legacy,
Sure.
and we want to make sure that we are doing the same for them. So it's, again, they're very difficult discussions because they are very personal, but what we're realizing is that the earlier we can start that discussion, the more open we can make that discussion so that it's recognized that we're all on the same page. No one
and it's
should
really
be trying
built
to push
into your
somebody
culture,
out.
you know, that
Exactly.
we're stewards of the law firm, and we want to leave something behind that was better than when we came in, and it really instilling it into your culture because you talk about it and you plan around it, and
Yes.
Not easy. And I know you've taken the lead on this, and you know, some of the senior lawyers aren't all that, you know, thrilled, but I sense that they recognize how important it is and are you know, doing what's in the best long-term interest of the firm.
Yes, and again, it all comes down to one word that you mentioned there, which is culture. And
Yes.
culture is something that we've struggled with over the past couple of years, defining what we mean when I say culture versus when one of our associates or staff members says culture versus what we mean when one of the more senior partners says culture.
Mm-hmm.
We throw that term around a lot, and we've tried to define what we mean by it. And what it really comes down to is, are we doing what's best for each individual here to provide them with the appropriate working environment and appropriate career so that we can maintain our business and effectively serve our clients in the way that they've grown accustomed to and in a way that is most effective for the counseling that we need to provide to them.
Well, Kirk, I really appreciate the conversation here. And before we kick it back to Colleen, I'll just close by asking you if there's any advice you might dispense to a managing partner trying to affect succession planning within his or her firm. What might you recommend to your peers out there leading mid-sized law firms?
Certainly so. The main recommendation that I can make is to start early and to discuss the issues openly and often. It's very important that the senior partners have a say and feel comfortable with the discussions that are taking place to know that the legacy that they've built up is being left in the proper hands in the proper way. I think it's also important that at some point to have some sort of plan in writing. This is the part that becomes more difficult because you can't necessarily say at this point in time this is going to happen. What you can have in place are some guidelines. This is how we hope a transition takes place in terms of bringing on team members, transferring responsibility, getting the appropriate contacts with the client in place to maintain those relationships to make sure that the client is being served properly. But as much as I say putting it in writing is important, it's also important to have some fluidity there. This has to be a procedure that's adjustable. Nothing should be in stone because circumstances change, client bases change, and personalities change. So because we say at this point in time this should happen doesn't mean if it doesn't happen on that time frame or in that manner with these people that the system has failed. What it should mean is that there's a fluidity here saying we need to make adjustments because this person isn't comfortable with it working that way, or this client needs to be managed a little differently. So this person needs to
I would think
each role.
Senior partner's a bit different. Each client's a bit different, and how they'd like their business transition to younger lawyers on the team.
Absolutely. But again, the most important advice I could give is to start the succession planning process early and keep it as an open discussion that occurs regularly.
How about, Kirk, and again, I could talk about this all afternoon, the accountability to make sure that plan is in fact being implemented, and we are seeing the transition, and what about the accountability? That's an important mechanism here as well.
Yes, a good way to address that, and again, this is something that we are still working through in our firm as well. So a lot of the advice I'm giving are things that we've considered maybe not completely implemented or implemented in an effective way, but certainly things that we've discussed regularly and talked about. But a good way that we feel we can present some accountability is to set milestones in place.
Okay.
For example, if there is a written plan in place where you can say, at this point in time of your practice, we need to be discussing how you're transferring the responsibility for these particular clients over to others who are involved in the management of that client. How is that occurring? Take a look at it during that time frame. Has it been an effective transfer? Are both sides committed to it properly? Is the person who's supposed to be stepping up and taking the role doing that in a way that the more senior partner feels comfortable? Is that senior partner doing what they should be doing to say, look, I need you to take responsibility and here's what I'm showing you to do that? If those milestones are met effectively by the more senior partner, perhaps there are some rewards that can be given to them, whether it be a financial reward, monetary of some sort, or other rewards that you might be able to put in place.
And
those are the types
senior
of
partners
things.
meet with the management committee every quarter, every 6 months to mark progress toward milestones? Do they meet with you? Who's the one that sort of works with them to set these milestones and then, you know, hold them accountable to meeting those milestones? Because we know how it tends to be if people aren't held accountable. We procrastinate, push things to tomorrow,
and in the most effective plans, we believe that those do have to be regular meetings that occur, and within our firm, it occurs at the management committee level. And again, this is an issue that we're still working through because it's a different structure than what we have used historically, but we feel that it is the best structure for us to implement for the long-term goals of the firm. So we expect those meetings to occur regularly, at least biannually, to say, are we on track for making this succession appropriate and making the transition of these clients to the right people on an effective and timely basis?
You know, Kirk, I think that's so important to actually affect the meaningful change is that accountability mechanism. And I see a lot of firms, well-intended, you know, we're going to put plans in place, and everybody submits a plan, and they kind of go into some black hole. They're never approved. There's no accountability to make sure you get what's your plan gets done, because it's often non-billable stuff that's in there. And you know, a lot of firms are fixated on the billable hour, and the rest of this stuff I'll get to some other time. And these things tend to languish, and as you say, we'll just reset the same plan a year from now and put the same thing out there another year from later, and you know, we don't see the transition and the investment and all that good stuff. Well, Kirk, I really do appreciate your time this afternoon, your participation in our podcast series. And Colleen, we'll kick it back to you.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of the Managing Partners Series, Leadership in Action. For more information and resources, visit LegalSolutions.com/managing partner.